to get back in. And there is an agenda out for this evening, and there's a little bit of reading that I have to do. We always start to explain that there is a website link that people who are interested in this meeting tonight should link on, and that is at https://
I'm serious.
www.norwalkct.org 1913 meeting notices. It's meeting dash notices. It's kind of lengthy, but hopefully you would have known about it before tonight. For this meeting, members of the public can call in and listen to a meeting. They will not be able to speak or see any of the meeting participants. Each meeting will use a unique meeting webinar ID. Please find the information using the link I just mentioned. Members of the public who wish to provide live comments will need to register in advance and use the Zoom meeting platform. All participants will be muted upon entering the meeting. To speak, click raise your hand indicator, and you will be called on by the host of the meeting during the public comment section. Please find the information using the link as mentioned. Members of the public who wish to view the meeting but are not participating can view a live stream on the City of Norwalk YouTube channel. This stream is delayed by approximately 20 seconds. Please find the information using the link. The information, recording, and minutes will be posted on the City Norwalk website within 7 days after the meeting. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment are encouraged to submit those via email in advance of the meeting. For these comments to be read into the record, they should be submitted at least 4 hours in advance. Send them to tmaldonado@norwalkct.org. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Who do we have here with us tonight? We have Tom Farkas, we have Keith Lyon, we have Marilyn Altman, and
I'm here, Andy.
all right, Lee is back, and myself, Andy Conroy.
Okay.
And we
Andy?
do we have 6?
Yeah, Andy, I'm here.
Danielle is with us also.
Yeah.
Danielle, did you make up your mind on recusal?
Yeah, I think I'm going to recuse.
All right, so at one point, somebody is going to have to step in for Danielle, and the way we normally operate, we operate with a full board when it's available, and then we bring an alternate in when we when Danielle recuses, you're going to have to step in her place. Okay. All right.
Andy, would you please lower your camera so we can see something more than the light over your desk?
Well, you don't want to look at the light.
There you are.
Yeah, there I am.
May I just ask Tammy a quick question? Does that affect anything about me?
Go.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure which item, Danielle, which item do you need to recuse?
320 Wilson Ave.
It won't affect you, Marilyn.
Right, got it.
We have one alternate available.
All right, so we're fine. As discussed. So let's see, that's called to order, roll call, public hearings. We can begin, Mr. Secretary.
Okay,
With item
Andy,
3A.
I still do not have an agenda. I have not received it from Tammy yet. So you give me the number and I will read it out.
Can you just refresh
have
your
the
email?
synopses? Do you have the staff reports?
Yes,
Okay,
I do.
the first one is 230119-01.
We were going to
Same.
move ahead to
Realty.
Burrit.
But I'm gonna
Okay.
put that on hold before we get going, okay? Just wait 1 minute. The folks at 34 Burritt wanted to pull out of the meeting tonight. And I guess we have a no timing issue with that. Is that correct, Tammy?
We are okay on the time, possible extensions, yes.
Right. At the end of the meeting, I want to have a discussion about this applicant.
The attorney is here representing the applicant. He wanted to ask for the continuation.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to grant it if the rest of the board agrees. But I still want to talk to them. We're looking at a report that we got from, I believe, Ireland yesterday. And so if you've seen it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, then we'll discuss it later. Okay?
Okay,
So go ahead. In other words, it's not something that is of a mystery to the applicant. The applicant would have provided the report to Ireland. So we'll just have to see what Ireland's response was. Continuing on. So if everybody's in favor, just let me know, raise your hand that we're going
Yes.
to 30. All right. We're
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For the record. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we don't have you waiting around all night to find that out.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So back to the opening item, which was 230119-01. Mr. Secretary.
Okay, now I gotta find that.
It's One San Francisco Realty.
Yeah, I
LLC.
know. I'm all discombobulated here. Into my paperwork. And Andy, I'm not finding it. I got all the others.
Hold on. Oh. I've got it.
Ah, I've got it, Van Zant.
Yeah.
Okay, right here. Okay. The second item on our agenda is item.
Well, I'm talking about One San Vincenzo Realty, so I don't want to confuse you. And it is at One San Vincenzo Place.
Oh,
Let me read it.
go ahead, Andy.
So the variance is for a minimum lot size of contractor storage yard, section 116-100, prior to its amendment. 12,500 square feet required, 10,500 square feet existing proposed in industrial 1 zone, and special exemption to change one non-conforming use container storage to another contractor's storage yard. Section 118-800C-4, or rather, paren 4, and 118-1410A, paren 2, paren D, per zone change to D residential. The property is located at 1 San Vincenzo Place, District 2, Lot 75, Block 75, Lot 127. And the request is the variance that the applicant is requesting special exemption to continue to operate a contractor storage yard, with that being specifically a landscaper business. Background: in 1999, a special permit was granted by the zoning commission for a refuse vehicle equipment storage building. Both zoning and building permits are also issued in 1999 for the construction of the building. Certificate of zoning compliance was issued in 2000. Staff analysis and findings: due to rezoning, this parcel is now residential. However, the effective date of the zone change occurred after the ZBA application was received. The landscaping business has operated for many years without complaints from the community staff. The staff does believe the use as a landscaper business is equal to or less than intense than the previous permitted commercial occupant. And then we proceed. Is there somebody representing the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, good evening, and Happy New Year to everyone. For the record, I'm Liz Succi. I'm a partner at Carmody Torrance, Sandak and Hennessy, 1055 Washington Boulevard in Stamford, and I represent the owner of the property, One San Vincenzo Realty LLC, and its principal member, Chris Harvey Smith, who is the owner of Create a Landscape Garden and Maintenance, which he operates and has operated at this site since he purchased it in 2008. Just by way of background and some housekeeping, the applications were filed on November 3rd, one for variance for lot area, one for special exception to change one non-conforming use to another. Neighbors were notified of the January hearing on January 5th, and a packet with the green domestic return receipt cards and copies of any letters for which we did not receive the green cards were returned to staff on January 18th and should be in the file. The second notification by certified mail return receipt requested was mailed on February 2 to notify neighbors of tonight's date of the hearing. Also, just for the record, I believe that there were numerous letters of support from neighbors, as well as a petition signed by several owners of units in the San Vincenzo condominiums, which is a neighboring property owner. They were submitted and I believe forwarded to all of you for review, and I ask that they be read into the record at the appropriate time. As mentioned in the memo, the applicant is One San Vincenzo Realty LLC. The property is at 1 San Vincenzo Place. Ms. Maldonado, may I ask you to screen share some of the photos if you could, while I'm just going through this background? It is
Yes,
District
just give
2.
me a moment. Thanks.
Certainly. District 2, Block 75, Lot 127. At the time of the submission of these applications, the property was zoned industrial number 1. After November 8th, it was rezoned to D residence as part of the industrial zones rezoning effort that the city undertook last year and continued into the fall. The rezoning made the applicant's longtime use non-conforming. The lot size is about 10,950 square feet. We have an updated survey with an updated square footage that was made part of the record and submitted to staff. And so it's about 1,500 square feet less than what a contractor's yard must have for it to be valid, and that is 12,500 square feet. Just going through some of the photos quickly, this is the intersection of Hemlock and San Vincenzo. 1 San Vincenzo is at the top of the hill. That's the existing construction building that was approved in 1999, constructed in 2000, which has been in existence since that time. Just some various photos of the site taken by me. They're not very artistic by any means, but it gives you an idea of where we're talking about, what the site looks like, and what some of the general neighborhood conditions are. Mr. Harvey Smith has been a lifelong resident of Norwalk, and he's on the line tonight in case you have questions for him. And again, he's the principal of 1 San Vincenzo Realty and also the owner of Create Escape Garden and Maintenance. He purchased the property. That is a view now looking north on San Vincenzo as it intersects with Hemlock. To the right, with the rock outcropping, is city-owned property, and to the left is a residential property owner who abuts our property to the north and to the north. Just to familiarize you with what the property around it looks like. This is San Vincenzo Place. Traveling, I guess it would be eastbound. At the end of San Vincenzo is a very nice condominium complex tucked away at the back and has great views of the water. To the right, with the fencing area, that is a community garden on land owned by the city of Norwalk. Another view of the structure that exists today, constructed in 2000, the condition of the property, and some additional views of the property and what the types of materials and equipment Mr. Harvey Smith keeps on the property for his landscape business. Thank you, Ms. Maldonado. I appreciate your help. So at the time Mr. Smith purchased the property 15 years ago, it was approved for the storage of containers and for the storage and maintenance repair of vehicles and indoor-outdoor storage of equipment for a small refuse company known as Advantage Waste, which was owned by George LeBlanc. He was the predecessor in interest. Mr. Harvey Smith bought the property from him. As mentioned, a special permit for this use was approved in 1999 for the construction of a 1,200 square foot building that exists today. Zoning permits, building permits were issued. Certificate of zoning compliance was issued as well. Since his purchase, Mr. Harvey Smith has used the property for his landscaping business, believing that it was consistent with those prior approvals. He provides property maintenance, landscape design, and installation services for clients in Norwalk, Westport, Darien, and other communities. He's been a very helpful and respectful member of the community toward his neighbors and enjoys an excellent relationship with them. He's assisted with the community garden cleanup That's the property, as I mentioned, between his land and the San Vincenzo condominiums. He's often removed dead trees and branches from that community garden. He's active in cleaning up the sidewalks in the street around his property and along the roadway leading to the condominiums. Frequently collects trash in the sidewalk in the street, and from time to time has even plowed the street so that residents at the end of San Vincenzo would be able to get out prior to DPW plows arriving on site. He has very limited equipment, about maybe 8 vehicles, a small excavator, a tractor, a chipper, which are often off-site and at job sites. He stores plants, soil, and mulch, and sometimes wood, and recycles and regenerates materials from other jobs, such as decorative rocks and various plants that he is able to regenerate and then use again. There's no rock crushing, there's no topsoil sorting or similar activities at this site as you would find at other contractors' yards. Mr. Harvey Smith has about 10 to 12 employees, full and part-time, who arrive around 7:30 and depart the site around 8:30 to go to job sites. They park on the property when they are out at job sites with Mr. Harvey Smith's vehicle. It's largely inactive during the day until the staff return, and for the final departure of the employees generally takes place around 6 p.m. The landscape, as mentioned in the staff memo, this landscaping business has operated on the property for 15 years without complaints from the neighbors that we know of, and without the issuance of any notices of violation or cease and desist orders by the city of Norwalk. Throughout the past approximate 15 years, he believed he was operating in accordance with the permits and approvals, and only recently learned that that understanding was an error. Compounding the issue is the recent rezoning of the property from Industrial 1 to D residence, which prohibits contractors' yards or similar type business uses. He was not aware of the rezoning effort until late in the process, but did attend the planning and zoning hearings and urged the commission to not rezone his parcel from Industrial 1 to D residence, but he was not successful in that effort. Even if he was aware of the rezoning effort, he wouldn't even have been able to correct his permit status because there was a moratorium in effect that no new contractor yard permits could be issued from 2020 to 2022. So this is one of the unintended consequences we submit to you of the recent industrial zone changes, and placed Mr. Harvey Smith in the unenviable middle of a zoning three-way perfect storm. And without some relief from this body, it's going to be detrimental to him and his business and his employees. With the expiration of the moratorium on November 8th and the effective date of the new deresident zone classification, he had a very narrow window to submit this variance application for lot area deficiency and the special exception to change one non-conforming use to another. So that's how we got here. So what is he seeking from you? Well, without relief from this board on both the minimum lot area for the contractor's yard and the special exception for the conversion from one non-conforming use to another, he'll likely be unable to operate his longstanding business at this location and will be forced to vacate and find another site, which will be extremely unlikely to find since contractor's yard space in Norwalk is now in great demand, and there are limited locations in the city where one can relocate, and it'll certainly be expensive. Furthermore, this will likely affect his 12 employees and the numerous customers that he serves and has served the past 15 years. So the proposal before you is to request that the minimum lot area be reduced from 12,500 to the 10,900 plus or minus that's shown on the survey. And if you'd like to see the survey, Ms. Maldonado, perhaps you could screen share that. There's no change in use. The operation of the site will continue as it has for 15 years. There's no proposed addition to the building, no proposed additional materials or operations or rock crushing or soil sifting. What has existed for the past 15 years will continue if you deem it appropriate to grant relief for that minimum lot size for a contractor's yard. As you know, the standard of review for a zoning board of appeals to grant a variance is that an applicant must demonstrate practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships that are created by the application of the regulations to a particular piece of property and the carrying out the strict letter of the regs. They may be granted when the request is in harmony with the general purpose of the zoning regulations to achieve substantial justice, and the granting of variance continues to secure the public health, safety, and welfare solely in instances where there are practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships. We submit that it'll be the change of zone, the moratorium, and the fact that there haven't been any complaints or issues with the operation of his business are practical difficulties and unnecessary hardships for him to have to relocate his business should relief from this board not be granted. As I mentioned earlier, he's been a very good responsive neighbor, as evidenced by the support from those around him, and his continued operation as it is today would not impair public welfare, safety, or health, nor impair property values. The special exception that we seek to change one non-conforming use, the container storage use, to another, the contractor's yard, is an opportunity under section 118-800C4A. And he must demonstrate to you for that request that the proposed use is equally or more appropriate to the zone than the existing non-conforming use, and that the proposed use will have the same or lesser impact on the surrounding area than the existing non-conforming use. We submit that the landscaper's contractor's yard, as it exists today and as it has existed, is equally appropriate to the industrial number 1 zone and the D residence zone, as was the equipment and material storage facility for a refuse hauler approved in 1999. We also submit that it's probably even more appropriate to the neighborhood, as it doesn't contain any sort of construction activities, large vehicles, sorting of materials, manufacturing or production of materials on the site, rock crushing or soil sifting or anything like that. So considering the foregoing, we urge you to grant the variance for lot width and the special exception to change one non-conforming use to another. Approval of his requests will allow this small business owner to continue in Norwalk. It won't impair property values. It won't impact health, safety, or welfare of nearby properties, but will, in the end, achieve substantial justice. I don't have anything further to add. We were delighted that the staff supports this request, and we certainly hope that you would give it all due attention and hopefully come to the same conclusion. Nothing else.
Does the staff have any question? I have one, but I'll hold mine off.
No,
I
didn't
have no questions.
All right. Tammy, did you have a discussion with Steve at all about the ability of the ZBA to grant a special exception after the zoning changes occurred? I would think grandfathering isn't quite the same in that instance.
Well, they actually got the application in before the zone change. So before the zone change was, effective. So, and Steve's aware of it. He has no issue with it. Spoke with Attorney Secchi, and I spoke with the principal planner as well. This was the course of action that they need to seek to legalize the use.
Yeah, the only question I'd really have is if we have the authority to do it. I actually don't have a problem doing it. I just don't know if we have the authority. With that in mind, assuming that we do have the authority, are there any further questions about changing the use? The use has to be no more intensive than the current use.
I have two questions, and I don't object to this either, but was this self-reported, so to speak? Did Liz, did your client come to you and with a problem having identified this, or was it as a result of a complaint to the zoning inspector?
Commissioner Lyon, that's an excellent question. No, it was self-reported. It was discovered as part of the zoning changes that were promoted last year. Mr. Harvey Smith was notified of the likelihood of his property being rezoned from industrial 1 to D residence, inquired of staff, and at that point, I believe, realized and was made aware that his use was not consistent with the permits that were approved 15 years and 20 years earlier. So it was not a result of a violation. He's never received a violation at this site, and all the
Okay, thanks, Liz. And the other question, well, the other concern I have is we, similar to what Andy said, which is, do we have the authority? And secondly, assuming we do we have a concern for setting a precedent?
Well, as far as do you have the authority, as Ms. Maldonado correctly indicated, when this was determined to be the issue, myself and Ms. Maldonado and Brian Baker, principal planner, all discussed this project, all discussed this request, and determined that yes, a special exception was available to us since the change in zone had not become effective as yet. Will it become a precedent setting? Well, at this point, zones have changed, and I would suspect that if anyone has an issue, that they would have been before you well before this time, since the zoning became effective November 8th. I don't know if others are in a similar circumstance. I can't answer that, but there has been some time for property owners to determine whether or not they are in a similar circumstance or would need to seek relief from you, either by way of variance or special exception or some other option.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my concern wasn't that we couldn't grant a variance. With grandfathering, we could, particularly given the date of your application. My concern really is that we changed the status of the property post the change. I'm not sure that we can do that, but I'm going to assume that we can for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that since the application was submitted prior to the effective date of the zone change, the regulations that existed at the time control. So you're not in a position where you don't have the authority to undertake and decide this application, since it was submitted prior to the effective date.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Other questions from board members? I hear none.
No.
Marilyn, do you have one?
No,
All right. With that in mind, is there anybody that is here to speak for this application other than the attorney?
So we've got several attendees, over a dozen. If you could either raise your hand if you're attending, through your computer. Okay, so we have one raised hand. Go ahead, Miss Jordan Byron. You need to unmute.
Good evening, commissioners. My
Good
name is,
evening.
good evening. My name is Jacqueline Jordan Byron. I live at 100 San Vincenzo Place, which is a condominium complex that is right after the community garden. So I'm also on the board. And so a lot of the owners I speak to in regards to groundskeeping and what's it like to live in that neighborhood, excess noise, pollution, fumes. And I'm happy to report that Chris Harvey Smith, his business is a very good business for the neighborhood. There are no negative impacts that we are aware of. His employees are respectful, especially when, the whole parking issue in front of the park, many times that's overflowed by other neighbors. And so they're respectful in terms of how they queue up. And during the course of the day, I don't hear any complaints about the workers because they're gone. They're out servicing other communities, building beautiful lawns and making sure that other needs are served. When they do come back to the facility at night, that's when we do see them, and they're pretty much getting their cars and they drive home. So in terms of Chris's operations, we're very happy with that. The operation that was there before, the business that was there before was the complete opposite. Big trucks, lots of noise, lots of fume, lots of dust. The hours of operation was not cohesive with the neighborhood. So we are looking to, have Chris Harvey Smith business continue as a good neighbor. In addition, he has set a very good example for other landscapers in the area because he has contributed to the beautification of the neighborhood, such as our community garden. He knows lots of our older neighbors in the complex, and he's very helpful in regards to supplying supplies that they needed. He has also helped me out as well. So I just want to go on record showing my support for his operations, hoping that he can stay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if anyone else would like to speak, you just raise your hand. If you're a call-in, you have to press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. Okay, we have Darlene Young. So Darlene, you just need to unmute and you'll be able to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Darlene Young. I live at 100 San Vincenzo Place, apartment 50. I too, like Miss Jackie Jordan Byron, am a neighbor and am here to speak in a positive light for Mr. Harvey's location. And while I have to be completely honest that I am a little disappointed that it would not be turned back into a residential or turned into a residential property, Mr. Harvey does deserve to be there with his business. He has been a good neighbor. There haven't been too many issues that I know of or can really speak to. And as you all know, this is a very difficult thing for me to even be speaking in favor of, because as you know, what South Norwalk looks like and why the planning and zoning had gone through the zone upgrade. Try to improve the area and to eliminate some of these contractor yards that have not been good neighbors for decades in South Norwalk. But as I stated, that's not the case with Chris and his property. Parking is always going to be an issue, and it does get kind of tight sometimes, but I won't say that that's just because of them. There are other neighbors that park there along the San Vincenzo, I'd say short corridor into our complex, but we manage. And so all I can say is that I hope that he will continue. I know that he will continue to be a good neighbor in the area. And as Ms. Byron alluded to, hopefully he will inspire others that are nearby to keep their property up and maintain. And we hope that he puts in buffers and makes, even continues to beautify his property, which in fact will help us. And although we know that landscaper yards do nothing to increase the value of property, again, we still are in support of Mr. Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Do we have anyone else? Tammy?
No one else is raising their hands. We have multiple support letters.
Okay, we will get to those. Does Lee have the letters?
I cannot find them in the 3 piles of papers I have regarding the meeting.
All right, well, we're going to impose on Tammy to read them, but before we do that, is there anybody that wants to speak in opposition to the application?
So this is your opportunity, if you're attending, to raise your hand and I'll allow you to talk. Again, if you're called in on the phone, you press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. No other raised hands.
All right, then let's go ahead with the support letters. If they're a format where it repeats itself over and over and over again, just mention that they're the same letter and then who the other person is for that letter.
Okay, first letter comes from John Igneri at 9 Ridgewood Road. Dear Zoning Board of Appeals, as a concerned citizen, I'm writing to request the ZBA approve the variance and special exception so that Chris Harvey Smith may continue to operate at this location as he has done for 15 years without any issue or problem with neighbors or the city. I have known Chris for those 15 years. As his client, I found him to be hardworking, creative, responsive landscaper, and a good neighbor. We need to continue to provide space and opportunity for such small businesses in Norwalk and not make them collateral damage of zoning changes. If such small businesses leave Norwalk, residents will experience increased costs given additional driving times and other operating expenses at their new locations outside of Norwalk. Please approve the variance and special exception. Thank you for your time, John Igneri. Next letter, Attention ZBA commissioners, this is actually a form, this is from Miss Jack and Jordan Byron, who spoke and lives in the condo association. She provides 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
18, I think she said.
yeah, 18 neighbor, it's a petition of support for, just essentially what the speaker mentioned about him being a good neighbor and helpful and cleaning up the park. And so you have the confirmation of 18 other neighbors. Okay, then third letter, to whom it may concern. I, Norman, agree with the changes put forward by Zoning Commission. I have been knowing Chris for almost 15 years, and he is a great guy. We have no problems with his business. He's a great guy, and he is well respected here in our community. He helps out with the planting in our community. If anyone else was to get his property, we would not know what to expect. We have no problems with his business. He and his workers are in by 8 and out by 5. They speak and they respect the community. We have not had any problems since he's been here. He's come to be known as our friend. Signed, Norman. I'm not sure what the last name is. Maybe Hillard. It's a signature. We have a letter from Mike Mushak. Dear to the Zoning Board of Appeals, a letter of support for One San Vincenzo. I'm writing this letter to support for this application as a private citizen, not as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I am doing this because I've known the property owner, Chris Harvey Smith, for over 20 years as a friend and neighbor. He owns a residential property next door to my house on Elmwood Ave and recognizes his many contributions to the city as a Norwalk resident his entire life. Now his small business needs the city's help to survive, which I hope you will support. As the owner of a small landscape contracting business myself, who has had trouble finding affordable spaces in Norwalk, along with so many others in similar situations, I am aware of the challenges Chris has as he struggles to survive in a very difficult situation with his unique property at One San Vincenzo. It's clear to me that this application will allow Chris to continue his low-impact business with more confidence in his huge investment in this unique property, and to continue to be a crucial part of our local economy by employing local residents and using local suppliers as he serves his many satisfied clients in Norwalk. It will also allow Chris to continue to be a good neighbor to the surrounding area, as I expect you will hear from others. This change will also create less impact on future surrounding uses, including the future school, as compared to the current zone use in terms of noise and air quality in relation to the small scale of his property. Thank you, Mike Mushak, 50 Elmwood Ave. Zoning Board of Appeals, dear commissioners, my name is Richard Walker. I am a 40-year resident of Norwalk. I'm writing in support of Chris Harvey. I'm going to start to paraphrase. He's a hardworking sole proprietor of this business. He's known him for 25 years. He's maintained the writer's yard year-round. Chris faced many challenges, and including finding reliable workers, but he delivers quality service. And he's aware of the satisfaction of the customers and the neighbors. This guy's affirming and endorsing him because of the sense of community and a trusted local provider who takes pride in contributing to the community. And he says that he knows that Mr. Smith has been operating out of this location for many, many years, and he's respectful and goes out of his way to do things for others and help people. So from his point of view, he would ask that the variances be granted. Next letter, this is Dear Chairman Conroy and members of ZBA. I'm writing as a concerned citizen regarding the public hearing for this application. The current use of the property is well suited for the area and has been in existence for 15 years. There are at least 6 other contractors' yards on Hemlock Place in close proximity to San Vincenzo, along with a few light manufacturing and tree service businesses. The proposed zoning changes from Industrial 1 to D residential will lower the value of the property and reduce the number of jobs for local residents. I understand the city's desire to simplify the various zones, but there will always be unintended consequences and considerations should be made. Thank you for your time and consideration. Tammy Langalis, 11 Indian Spring Road. Dear Zoning Board of Appeals. Oh, I already read that one.
Yeah.
That one was mailed in as well. Okay, I think that's it.
All right. Now that you've heard all the letters, or does anybody on the board have a further question? And I only have one advisory comment to make, and as much as I think this is a good app and we should approve it, keep in mind that anything you approve for this person, who's obviously done a wonderful job, applies to the next person that would be there at that property. Who may or may not do as good a job. So with that in mind, we have approved a reduction in size for a landscaper to be in a contractor's yard. And since we have done that, I think we just kept in mind that we had to ban some things. For instance, no rock crushing, no soil sifting, and that you have to comply with the city's sound ordinance, noise ordinance. I don't think there's
that's
a
fine.
parking issue here, is there? I think it's beneficial. The way the property is set up is beneficial.
Great.
Anything else? So with that in mind, let's just move on to the next application. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
So. are
Andy,
you
the
all
next-
set, Lee?
The next application number, Andy?
It is 230119-02.
10 Richmond
Patrick-
Road.
Yeah, Bogos on 10 Richmond
Yes.
Road.
I've got it.
Pagos, not Bogos, Pagos.
Bigos. Okay, item 23-0119-02. Patrick and Julie Bagos. Variance of maximum number of stories, 2.5 required, 3.5 proposed, and variance of front setback, 30 feet required, 14 feet existing, proposed to elevate for flood compliance. Add a small garage addition, section 118-340C at existing single-family dwelling in B resident zone. Property located at 10 Richmond Road, District 6, Block 5, Lot 36. Request: the applicant seeks variance for number of stories to raise the home for flood compliance. A 40 square foot addition is also proposed to slightly expand the attached garage. Background: this single-family home was built in 1929. It is existing non-conforming in footprint, encroaching into the front setback. It is not currently FEMA flood compliant. Analysis and findings. FEMA flood hazard zone regulations are meant to ensure that all structures in a flood zone are adequately constructed to withstand a flooding event. The proposed height of the structure is compliant with the maximum allowed. The board has looked favorably upon requests for increased number of stories for structures that will be built flood compliant. The request for number of stories and the very small addition to the garage are reasonable. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, one quick correction. The board at the last meeting approved a small addition.
Yes,
That was
okay.
done separately.
Yes, we
So
did
what we're
approve
looking
that
at-
addition for the garage.
That's at the garage, rear of the garage. What we're looking at tonight is the story and whether or not they're staying within the footprint boundary. And it has been our norm to approve applications that do stay within the footprint boundary as it exists now. And then obviously you're pushing the building up to provide the space underneath for flood compliance. So that's generally not been an issue with us. Where we run into some problems with somebody is pushing the top of the roof up to the point where they're trying to create more usable space, and in another half story or story, that's been a problem from time to time. but I'm sure that we could say that the space is not habitable as a condition. With that in mind, who's representing the applicant tonight?
Good evening, Adam Blank of Wapsie Rosen. I live here in Norwalk for the applicants Patrick and Julie Bagos at 10 Richmond. If I can share my screen. This is, as you know, this is a continuation of the prior public hearing. 10 Richmond is right here in the middle between Rowayton Avenue and Rowton. You've got Bailey Beach down here. The current house is like this, and the proposal, just to show it, is to elevate it, simply to lift it by about 8 feet to make it FEMA compliant. When it gets raised that 8 feet, it creates a first floor underneath, which brings us from 2.5 to 3.5 stories, although we have some disagreement with staff as to whether it really is 3.5 stories, but for our purposes, I think it's suitable for us to consider it 3.5 stories as opposed to it being 2.5 or 3, even elevated. So we are looking for a variance at this point just for the stories to go from 2.5 to 3.5. Obviously the first quote story is just going to be garage or crawl space, which didn't exist previously. It can't be a habitable space. And we're not going to exceed the maximum height permitted. So we're within all the midpoint, and the maximum roof height stays within the zoning regulations, and we don't need a variance in that respect. It's just for the stories. We do have letters. This is us right here, number 10. There are letters of support from the 5 most impacted neighbors for the variance requested.
These existed last month?
Those, yes, the variances, the letters of support were there last month and this month. I can run through, I mean, I won't do it if unless you need me to, because you have seen quite a number of these types of variances before. The case law is fairly clear that, when you're raising for FEMA, that in itself is a basis for the granting of a variance, which is exactly what's happening here. We do have Mike Stein, the architect, is here with us. He can talk to you about the sort of the elevations and the floor plans, if you'd like him to go through that.
Well, I think that we generally have approved this in the past, as long as you're within the foundation that exists now with the new structure. And as exists, we did approve a slight change, and it was slight, to the foundation behind the garage. So I consider that to be the current foundation.
Yeah, so we would be then within that same foundation based on the granting of the prior variance.
All right. And I only bring it up because we do get applications that want to build out quite a bit, and we turn them down.
Right, yeah, that was a 40 square feet for the staircase. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
44 to be precise. Yeah, we're all set.
I'm rounding down.
Let me just throw it to the board because we have a lot to do tonight. And do we have questions from board members?
Well, I think we ran through this pretty well at the last meeting, deciding to sever the garage from the lifting of the house. I really don't have a problem. We've looked at, several dozen of these cases over my term on the board, and I have no issues with it.
Yeah, I have no issues either. Anyone else on the board that wants to ask questions or offer an assessment? All right, absent that, let's just move on and ask if there's anybody here that wants to speak in favor of the application.
Okay, so attendees, this is your opportunity. Raise your hand and then I will allow you to talk. Again, if you've called in, you press *9 on the phone to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. No raised hands.
No raised hands. Is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition to the application? Well, once again, *9 to raise your hand.
*6 to unmute. No raised hands.
All right. Since we have all the information we need, I think it's time to move on to the next application.
Did we want to read the support letters into the record?
Well, I thought we did that already.
No.
I can
No.
pull them up and run through it real quick if you want.
You got them handy?
Yeah, I can.
I just wondered if Tammy had them handy.
Oh, sorry.
I do
Yeah.
have them, yes.
All right,
Whatever
just-
you prefer.
Yeah, just do a quick summary of them.
Okay, so they're super brief. The first one is dated January 6, 2023, to whom it may concern. This notice to reflect that as neighbors of the Bagos family, we have no objections whatsoever to the planned house lifting and renovation project. The Bagos family are wonderful neighbors, conscientious and thoughtful about their plans, and we support the work and upgrades they are planning. We hope it meets a favorable response from the city. Signed, Michael Diamond at 11 Richmond. Michael and Amy Miller. Michael Diamond, Amy Miller. Then there's a petition style letter. We are the neighbors of Pat and Julie Bagos at 10 Richmond. We have reviewed their building plans to lift their existing house, and we have no objections to the project. Signed, Melanie Lynch at 12 Richmond, Stephen Petricone at 19 Meridian, Frederick Golden at 21 Meridian, and John Malvisi at 20 Juniper. That's it.
So we've got it? Good. Adam, do you agree that we've read them into the record?
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, terrific. We're going to move on to the next application.
Hey, Andy, give me the number.
Yeah, give me a minute to get the
Okay.
number. It is 23-119-04. Leonard and Natalina Pino, 34 Bird Avenue, who we have
Nope, sorry, that one was
have
continued.
already told them that they're able to move on and their attorney has left. Next on the agenda is 20, I think we have somebody who's going to recuse themselves. 23-011905 MCP Wilson LLC, located at 320 Wilson Avenue. And Danielle, you're recusing? And
Yep.
Tom, you're sitting in for Danielle. Okay, you ready
I'm
to
ready to
rock?
read it.
All right, go.
Item number 23-119-05. MCP Wilson LLC. Variance of height of existing wall signs, 20 feet maximum allowed. North sign, 32 feet, 11 inches, existing proposed. South sign, 38 feet, 9 inches, existing and proposed. And letter size 24 inches maximum, 34 inches existing and proposed. Section 118-1294A2 and B1 at an existing public storage facility in industrial zone 2. Property located at 320 Wilson Avenue, District 5, Block 84, Lot 199. Request: the applicant seeks variance to allow 2 existing wall signs to remain as installed. Background: the property contains a permitted public storage tenant within an approximately 45,000 square foot, 2-story building constructed subsequent to zoning commission approval in 2019. Analysis and finding: there were errors by the zoning staff in issuing the sign permit, as well as errors on the sign plan. For those reasons and practical difficulty, staff supports the granting of variance to allow both existing signs to remain as installed. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. speaking rather than inches, let's talk feet here for a second. So we have a 3-foot sign where we should have a 2-foot sign, is that right? And
It is the overall,
I want to simplify it just a little bit.
Yeah. It's letter height that's too large, and then the actual installed height, not the actual dimension of the overall sign.
Okay,
Um,
so as
Are there
I,
setbacks from the road? Are there, as we have run into with other applicants? Or are they right up at the edge of the road?
They're on the sides of the building. I'm not sure I follow.
The distance that an observer has to see the sign,
We have some
more than 50
photos.
feet?
Maybe. Let me take a look at the site plan. Can bring the site plan up.
Can we make a presentation?
Well,
Oh.
it could, but I was just curious where it is, because they're talking about a mistake having been made, and I was wondering what that was exactly.
I can certainly explain that.
Andy,
All right.
why don't we let Liz do her presentation and we can delve into it further?
Tammy can look at the plan, and then Liz can give the presentation.
That would be
Okay.
great. Great. In the meantime, Ms. Maldonado, if it's possible to screen share the 2 photos, that would, I think, give some explanation as to what we're talking about.
Yeah,
For
just
the
give me one
record-
second.
Sure. For the record, my name is Liz Suchy. I'm a partner at Carmody Torrance, Sandak and Hennessy, and I represent the property owner, MCP Wilson LLC. Present this evening are 3 members of the LLC, Jason Lammy, Samir Mistry, and Ryan Carroll, in case you have any questions of any of those. The application for variance was filed in December. Neighbors were notified of the January hearing on January 5th, and a packet with green cards was returned to staff. Neighbors were notified of tonight's hearing on February 2nd, and that packet was returned to staff yesterday. The property is located at 320 Wilson Avenue. That is the approach toward Rowayton. That is one of the signs that exists at a height that is higher than the 20-foot maximum for a wall sign allowed in the regulations. It's in excess of 30 feet. And the P, B, L, S, T, some of the uppercase letters and some of the lowercase letters are larger than 24 inches, as is permitted under the zoning regulations. They're approximately 34 inches. The property is District 5, Block 84, Lot 199. It used to be zoned industrial number 2, industrial number 1. It is now zoned industrial 2 by virtue of the zoning the rezoning of the parcels as part of the industrial zone changes in the fall. It's approximately 2 acres. It's improved with a self-storage facility that was built in 2020. Originally, this was supposed to be a high bay warehouse, but in 2021, a tenant fit-up permit for self-storage facility was sought and approved. And public storage offers about 1,000 climate-controlled units, varying in size from 5 by 5 up to 10 by 25, generally open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, and weekends from 9:30 to 5. The request for variance is for letter size and for height of sign from grade. The maximum height of sign from grade under the regulations is 20 feet. And as I said before, maximum letter size is limited to 24 inches, not 34. In March, here's a little bit of the background, I think, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman. In March of 2022, plans by Image National Sign for wall signage were submitted to staff. In April, a zoning permit was issued for the wall sign. And a little later in April, around the 20th, a building permit for the wall signs was issued by the building department. The signs were then fabricated and affixed to the north and south facades in reliance on the permits issued. The applicant then requested a certificate of zoning compliance so it could obtain a final certificate of occupancy for the structure and for the use. And it was at that time when staff inspection that it was discovered that the sign from grade wasn't 20 feet. Rather, the north sign, which is at the top photograph, is 32 feet 11 inches. So it's 12 feet plus higher than what the maximum height is allowed. And the sign on the south side is at 38.9 feet. So that's 18 feet higher than what is allowed. It was also discovered when staff and I reviewed the plans that the letter height for both some of the uppercase and lowercase letters exceeded the 24-inch maximum letter height permitted under the zone. So unfortunately, no certificate of occupancy and no certificate of zoning compliance could be issued, and clearly no certificate of occupancy could be issued. And that's creating a variety of financing and other issues for my client. So the request for variance doesn't emerge out of a sign erected without permits or a sign that was done in any other way other than with proper permits and with the review that was undertaken. Unfortunately, the request emerges from unintentional errors and omissions by the national sign, Image National Signs, and as well as inadvertent oversights by staff who didn't notice the letter height didn't meet the requirements, and that the sign height was not either not shown on the plans or didn't meet the maximum height of sign from grade. So how do we rectify the situation? Well, first is we're seeking a variance to leave the signs exactly where they are. We think that it's reasonable. The signs are there. It doesn't impede visibility. It doesn't impede traffic or create any safety issues. The other option would be to remove the signs and lower them to compliant heights, and then remove them and have compliant lettering. The problem with that is the types of signs that have been affixed to the building are of a nature that they're inserted with nearly 250 type fasteners go into the exterior facade. And then there's a heavy duty aeronautic adhesive that is applied to the back of the sign. So that is then the sign gets affixed to the exterior of the building. So removing those signs would create a substantial amount of damage to those facades. I think on the north side of the building, we wouldn't be able to do it in any event in the location where it is, since there's a window in the way. And there are limited locations, if any at all, that sign could be placed at a compliant location. So we're asking that, based upon the way in which this came about, the reliance that my clients placed on the permits that were issued, and the inadvertent missing or omissions by the sign contractor, and the fact that the staff missed this as well, we ask that you grant the relief that we seek. Clearly, zoning staff is very busy, and they receive many applications and have to review a lot of plans. Sometimes things are missed, and this is one of those instances. And we submit that, however, that the fair and equitable way to resolve this would be to leave the signs where they are and not force my client to undergo the unnecessary expense to move them, remove them, and have issues related to the exterior of the building result from removing the signs and making them compliant. They did rely upon the permits that were issued. The permits were issued in good faith. They sought the permits in good faith, went through the entire process, including building permit and sign fabrication. And it's just unfortunate that these issues were not noticed earlier and corrected prior to the fabrication and installation. If any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But that kind of describes what's taken place and how we got to the point where we are today.
Okay, Ms. Sachi, I understand the procedures that your client has gone through. I would like to see the two elevation drawings of the building that would have been submitted with the application for the signs. Do we have that?
I'll bring them up. It'll take me just a minute, okay?
Okay.
Sure.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Marilyn.
Just to be really clear, Ms. Suchi, are you saying that there was an error in the company in terms of making the actual sign, but there was also an error in the zoning board in granting the permit for this? Was it a double overlook?
That's correct. There was an error in the contractor who prepared the plans. That information was either lacking or information was on the plans, and then that was missed. Whether it was the information that was shown that was incorrect was missed by the staff, or information that was lacking was never brought to the attention of the sign contractor. So it's a little bit on both sides. And unfortunately, then it just went down the path to get the zoning permit and then a building permit. And then the sign contractor was relying upon the permits issued to fabricate the sign. And that's where we are today. Shown on this sign, if you look at the drawing, as a matter of fact, it's 38 inches, not 34. The P, the B, the L, the I, S, T, and G that's shown on the plan is 38 inches. And unfortunately, that was just missed. Things happen and sometimes folks are busy and was just an inadvertent oversight on the part of the staff for not catching that. And I suspect that very similarly, the dimension from grade was not identified on the plan. And more often than not, that dimension, it should have been on the plan and that was missed as well.
Okay,
Tammy's working on it.
We're not seeing it?
You
yeah,
are,
no,
Yeah, it just needs to be
Yeah.
turned.
Yeah, I don't know that I can turn it. I'm trying to figure
it's
it out.
okay. I can read drawings in any direction.
You ready to move on to the next page?
Yeah,
So here's the dimension of the letter height that was missed by another staff member, not me, to clarify.
thank you.
And here is the south elevation, so there's no proposed height to the top of the sign.
It also appears to me, if we can go back to the photograph of this side of the building, that the sign is shown in a very different location than where it was actually installed.
Mm,
no, they're exactly the same.
I want to see that. Tammy, scroll down. This is on this screen showing the north side. The sign is shown where it is properly, where it was installed on the north side.
right.
But if
so
we go to the south elevation, keep going. Keep going.
There it is.
I don't think this sign is actually installed. I mean, my memory is short these days. I don't think this sign is installed where it's shown on the drawing.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be.
There's the north.
There's the north.
shoot, hang on.
Tammy, you're getting good at this.
Oh, yeah.
If you can scroll down. No, it is. It's shown in the same
Yeah,
correct
just on the
location.
side of the window.
Yeah, I thought it was above the window.
So did I, but it's
Okay.
not.
Okay. So we have a situation where everybody made an error, both parties. It never got caught.
But I'm driving down this, well, it's not.
The
a
sign is in
public road,
violation in two, yeah.
But it's not 95. where I'm used to seeing a sign of this size, but in scale, when I'm driving to 136, it's kind of in your face in both places. So mistakes are made. So we're kind of going to say, well, who pays for it? The people who live and will watch this all the time will swallow the error, which seems to me to be not the right answer.
Well, they would, this structure and this applicant would be entitled to have a sign on that wall anyway. It might be a little lower and some of the lettering might be a little smaller, but it would not obviate their ability to install a sign on this facade.
I would do it. Just anecdotally, there's a lot of backlash going on because of a lot of public storage facilities being built in and around the metropolitan area, and people are drawing attention to that. So I'm just saying, John Q. Citizen probably sees a lot of these signs, and in a system of GPSs, you know where these places are. So I don't think you need to be larger than you need to be just to say, yes, we're doing business here. So
But-
I would like to see it shrunk.
But just keep in mind, there is also a doctrine of municipal estoppel that we relied upon the permits issued, granted some of the information was not clear or was missing or was missed. But it wasn't that the sign contractor ignored the permits issued and put up a sign that was larger than what was permitted and approved. This was approved, and I
get it, Liz. It's basically a ball that rolls to the wall, right? Nobody puts a glove on it, so it gets to the wall.
There's
Yeah,
two
so to speak.
questions.
So to speak.
These signs, are they illuminated?
They are not internally illuminated. There are light fixtures, as you'll see, between the light color and the darker beige. Those are light fixtures that exist on the building that were approved as part of the special permit site plan approval for the structure.
Okay,
These signs themselves do not have they're not backlit, and they're not like gooseneck lights over the top of the middle to make the sign.
Okay. Now, you raised the issue of how these signs were attached to the building with hundreds of fasteners and probably aircraft construction grade adhesive. What's going to happen when the tenant in the building might change? How in the hell are they going to get these signs off the building without doing substantial damage?
That's the crux of one of our arguments to you. That's the problem.
Oh, I
That
know. Is
that's-
your argument that these signs are going to be in this location in perpetuity?
well, for as long as as public storage is the tenant, those signs will remain. I can't answer what a future tenant would do or wouldn't do, or if they would be asked.
Well, if my memory is correct, in terms of approved signage, a new tenant would be able to come in and put a sign in those locations with letters of those size, correct?
I would disagree because the signage is specific to this specific tenant. So the variance would go to the specific
No,
letter.
no, Liz, that's not right.
Well,
If
It goes with the
variance is
building.
granted- No, I'm not buying that. If the variance is granted, it goes with the property. It isn't part of the tenancy or the owner.
I think signage is different. I think signage that is specific to a specific tenant or a specific identifier on a building it doesn't necessarily go to the next owner, that the next owner or tenant can have that exact same signage because it's a different sign.
We would, we would argue.
I beg to differ with you, Liz. There was an issue, a number of years ago with a shopping center on Connecticut Avenue, where one of the tenants had a sign that was exceedingly larger than what was currently permitted, and the new tenant was able to utilize the same sign dimensions.
Was it a ground sign or a wall sign?
It was a freestanding sign on a pole with other tenants in the
Right.
shopping center.
Right, so a ground sign, that's a location. So we
Okay.
hold, yeah, with wall signs, we would say you have to do what was that the variance is approving a specific plan.
Okay.
Well,
Marilyn
you
had a
could put up-
question.
Well, I'm just thinking, you can put up something for the new tenant that meets maybe not both requirements, but certainly the letter height requirement.
Yeah,
And
Mar-
may not be quite as garish as this sign.
yeah.
What we ought to do is put a condition on any variance grant that if the sign is changed at any time for any reason, that it then apply, whatever the current code at that time is, be applied.
Yeah, Marilyn
I
wanted to
agree.
speak.
Well, I'm just asking, I mean, is there any instance that this has happened before? I mean, have we had, here seems to be an issue. I have a whole thing about signs, and I would like to have seen the sign be, within the constraints of what is allowed. However, there was also error, it seems, on the zoning board. So have we had any precedents with this? How do you work that out when maybe no intent, but it was done because there was no clear delineation? And do we know that for a fact? I'm just asking. And do we have any precedents where this has happened, that we know what to do here?
Commissioner,
The only I'm aware of is a freestanding sign. I haven't known of any wall signs on businesses where it happened, but it probably has. It's not that weird an error.
it's
I don't
unusual.
think it's set a precedent.
In my experience, it's unusual that a sign package went to the extent that it did, and the issues that we're discussing tonight were not caught at some way along the line. I haven't experienced this in my career, that it went from the plans being submitted to being reviewed, to a permit being issued by the zoning staff, to a building permit being issued, and then a sign fabricated, and then it being erected on the building. And at the time that a certificate of zoning compliance is sought, that's when it's caught. It's highly unusual. And I call your attention to some of our argument in our moving papers that we believe that because of what has happened, the city should be stopped from demanding that we take the sign down, since there was all good intention on the part of the applicant to submit in the proper form to move the project forward as they deemed appropriate, to follow the requirements of necessary permits. It's just an unfortunate confluence of events between signs that the plans that were missing some information, and the missing information was either not caught by staff or anyone else along the line.
All right, we got that. So the question is, can we stomach this enough to say that the city was at least partially at fault, and therefore we'll accept it as is? And I think we could do that, but I think we would want to demand that if there, because signs do change, tenants do change, that whatever the sign code is at the time be met when the sign is changed. And I would want that as a condition of our approval,
I'm sorry.
even though we were partly at fault.
That is certainly a more than fair condition of approval, and we would certainly accept that. And again, Mr. Conroy, I apologize for interrupting you.
No problem.
We have some raised hands in attendees, just so we're aware.
Okay, we don't have any letters of support. We do or don't?
Oh, sorry. No, yes, we have one letter of support.
Okay, can I hear that letter of support?
Mm,
Bum, 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 bum.
Well, I've got one here to whom it may concern. I, Joseph Grasso, own and operate Crystal LLC located at 314 Wilson Avenue, writing to inform you that as a neighboring establishment of 320 Wilson Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut, 06854, I do not have any concerns or issues with the existing exterior signage for the building. I am aware of the pending application for variance for wall signage. There's a blank here for structure at 320 Wilson Avenue, and I support the request. Thank you, Joe Grasso.
Good. There was just the one letter?
One letter of support.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak in support?
So there's one attendee with their hand raised, but I believe they're in here. I know they are here to voice opposition.
All right,
You'll
well,
get a
we'll get,
chance.
after we get those supporters heard, then we'll move to opposition.
Right.
Then I assume that there are no more. So do we have anybody who's in opposition?
So we have a couple of letters, and then I'll go ahead and have the attendee. It's Mr. Rhodes, and you just need to unmute and you'll be able to speak.
Okay, well, let's get one of them rolling here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi,
Uh-huh.
evening. Appreciate everyone's looking into this issue. So for context, I'm a resident of Village Creek. We did reach out to Attorney Suchi prior to this meeting, prior to the original meeting, to see if we can come up with an amicable agreement on the sign. So for context, again, the sign is on the south side of the building is the one that we have issue with. So it's the sign that could potentially be lowered and or moved to the front of the building. We've suggested both. We never heard anything on that being agreeable. For us, the concern is that it comes over the water into Village Creek. So it's not a roadside issue. It's that we have no natural barrier to that sign. And as a great term for how we feel about the sign, being very garish in view. We weren't consulted prior to the sign going up. I think there's some issues with us being considered abutting neighbors, given that we're over the water. So we couldn't voice concern at that point. We voiced concern back in July, shortly after the sign went up, and we've been in contact with NPZ continually since that time to have it addressed. It hadn't been reviewed yet. Sorry, Andy, are you raising?
I'm trying to figure out north, south, east, west, and where Village Creek is versus the building.
Right. So I'm on Split Rock Road. I face directly almost at that sign over the water.
All right,
So
so
on
you're
the south side,
directly,
so coming from Rowayton, so going north,
so you're directly south?
correct, south east. But
Got it.
myself and other neighbors on Split Rock Road all have the same concerns. We've had other issues with other businesses, namely the Joe Grasso 314 Beer Garden, who's written a letter in support. But the sign, in our view, is in violation. I don't think anybody's arguing that it's not in violation. So regardless, if it's NPZ, the owners of the building, that the sign should need to be moved. There's no reason that the sign needs to stay. There's been multiple proposals, again, moving the sign down just on the south side. We're not concerned with the north side sign. We're not asking for that to be moved. We're not asking for the letter sizing to be moved. We're simply asking for the sign to either be moved down where we do have some natural obstruction where we aren't looking at the sign, and or moved to the front of the building where there does look to be an equal sort of sizing piece that wouldn't face any other residents going that way as far as we're aware. Another proposal would be that the sign could be painted. It could be painted over if there was an issue with removing it, paint it the same size as the building, and then install a new sign that is in compliance. Those are our main concerns. It also sets precedent. I know it's been noted that any new sign in the area would need to go through another approval process, but at this juncture, I think it does open up the option or the potential that we end up with more signs over there. So I don't think we should be setting that precedent just on the one sign and the inability to move. I noticed in the application that there was a cost prohibitive in trying to figure out who the owners were. I've had difficulty. It's an LLC that seems to tie back to a property management company in both Darien and in New York City. So I find that questionable as to a cost prohibition in being able to move the sign. Our property value is in scope here. I mean, we don't have any other signs, and we understand what that area is. It's a light industrial area, and we're fine with that. But as far as taking our natural view and throwing up, in effect, a billboard sized sign on the side of the building just seems out of scope. And regardless of who's to blame here, it should need to be rectified. The last piece that I will mention is on page 7 of the application for variance. It is noted, and again, there's been a lot of mistakes here, but it is noted at the very top that it's to perform the following work. So this looks like the approval: install 2 illuminated wall signs for public storage on the north side of building. Nothing was approved for the south side of the building. Any oversight, possibly a mistype, but there was no approval for a sign on the south side of the building at the end of the day. I'll pause there, see if there's any questions for me.
I just would like that addressed when we're done with hearing everyone.
We have one more raised hand. Ryan, just unmute yourself. You should be able to.
Yes, hi everyone. Sorry, I was trying to get my hand up when we were speaking in the in favor of section, but if you happen to hear a 2-month-old screaming in the background and joining, I apologize for that. I just wanted to speak on behalf of ownership for a second. And, first off, I wanted to take the time to thank all of you for being here and, hearing this. I know this is a public storage branded property, but, we're an emerging manager. We're not a large company like Public Storage. This is our first project in Norwalk. We have hopes and intend to do a lot more projects in Norwalk. And this has been an extremely important project for us. I felt the need to just kind of set the scene a little more. Our intent never was to say, okay, how large of a sign can we get away with, or, get anything in place that was non-conforming or was not what we were able to do. We had outsourced the hiring of both sign design and then sign erection to put on the building. And, we had submitted to the zoning department what we were advised were conforming plans. And once we had put those with the zoning department, they were sent back to us with an approval. So from that time, all we did was just continue forward with, continuing to get our branding on the building and put the signage up. Just wanted to reiterate that there was never an intent not to conform. We, submitted to Tammy and the zoning department. They were great to work with. They did a great job in, getting back to us on all aspects of the project. And just wanted everyone to put into consideration that, there was no malintent there. And this would be a very cost prohibitive item for us to have to move this sign. Could potentially be exposed to the structural integrity of our building by removing all these rivets. So again, just wanted to put out there that this is something that is potentially very cost prohibitive to us. We did not try to cut any corners or do anything that we thought was non-conforming to the zoning department or for the area. And I can pause there and just wanted to make sure on behalf of ownership, someone was able to speak.
May I ask you a question, Mr. Carroll?
Sure, please.
Okay. Since we have a complaint from one adjoining property, would you be willing to paint out the red into a gray or more subtle color, the background of the sign?
Talk about one sign, Lee, like the south side?
Well, I would say I'd ask for one, but I'd hope that they would, in branding themselves, do both signs.
I would say that we would not have opposition to that. However, we've outsourced the management of the property to Public Storage. They are, a very large publicly traded company. They have brand standards that they have to adhere to. So honestly, if it was up to us, we would not have an issue with that. But unfortunately, given the management of our facility by, a publicly traded company, I'm not sure if I can answer that right now, that we would be able to do so.
Okay, my second question, and I kind of asked Liz Suchy this. You've got a sign on your building that's put up with hundreds of rivets and industrial adhesive. And you claim it's expensive to remove and will damage the building, correct?
Correct, yes. So
Okay,
so
how are
those
you gonna
rivets-
get the sign off when Public Storage moves?
Mr. Levy, we can't predict what is going to happen and how that's going to happen. We can
I
only,
just ask a question, Liz.
I can't
You
answer.
know,
I can't
we,
answer that.
we've already said that if a new sign comes to zoning for approval, that we would ask for the correct size letters to be incorporated into that. We may not ever ask them to move the sign or downsize it. I bring up what might be an inevitable situation.
Well, perhaps a new tenant would, instead of deciding to remove it, would cover it so that
Okay.
if whatever material.
Well, you know,
it's still that letter.
you've both brought up a situation where you say, well, it's going to be really expensive to remove. We cannot consider the cost involved as part of our decision.
Right.
And that's been the standard here for the, I don't know, 6-7 years that I've been on the board.
It's part of the state statute.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you can't consider the cost. Anyway,
Marilyn had her hand raised.
okay, wait a sec.
Oh, sorry.
It seems to me that we should be looking at a possible change to the sign. Anyway, Marilyn, what have you got?
Well, a couple things. I kind of am leaning that way. I think that this is kind of unique. But I did want to ask Mr. Carroll, I mean, everyone says it's very expensive to change a sign. Has anyone, priced that out to begin with? And couldn't there be some sort of, a deal made here, that, I'm very sensitive about signs. Because I come from New York City and I see that, I'm not saying that there was any intent at all, and yet this is where we're at, this is what's happening. And isn't there a way to, do something about the sign, whether it is just in terms of color, to come to, to a halfway point, that no harm, no penalty here. But I do think that the sign is probably obnoxious, not for any, intent, but it's gonna, whether the client moves at some point, the sign will have to be either done something with, because that's part of the original, when they move in and they've changed it. But maybe it should be named what the quote is to change it, or B, if the coloration is changed so that it's a lot easier on the eye, and maybe people can, maybe that's, maybe that is the deal or the compromise. So that's all.
I understand what your point is, and we've had the argument made to us in the past that the company taking charge of the property has standards for their signs. And we have said, we don't care. The sign has to comply with our sign code. In this case, we screwed up. So
Right.
we have these signs here partly because we screwed up. So with that in mind, I think we ought to look for a way to reduce the impact at least of one of the signs. And whether or not corporate folks have sign standards, they're going to have to understand that we
Yeah,
can't
that's the problem.
quite live with both signs.
Yeah,
And-
no, that's what I'm saying. That there should be.
Andy, I missed another attendee that has their hand raised.
Okay, they were all along with it raised, or?
I think they raised their hand while Mr. Rhodes was talking.
All right, let's hear them. Ryan, we're gonna go ahead and hear whoever this other person is.
Okay, Chia West, you need to unmute.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Chef.
Hi. I just have a couple of quick things that I wanted to add to what Oliver was saying. I have submitted some photos. I don't know if those are going to have been looked at by everyone. I live on Split Rock Road, and the sign is in full view across from my deck here, and I'm pretty upset about it, but I know there was no intent, Ryan. But I do think that when starting a business and you've got the professionals supporting you, with a publicly traded company like that, I'm a little surprised that they didn't look at the zoning parameters and submit everything that needed to be submitted. You were dealing with professionals, and it's too bad that it didn't work out. But I don't think that we should pay, the price of having to look at your sign all the time, especially there's really only us over here on this side of the water that can see that sign. One little comment that I'd like to add is that there are a lot of businesses over there, and nobody has a sign like that. They're all lower to the ground. They are big businesses. We've got the ice rink back there. They could have had a great big sign plastered on the ice house. Everything is really below the 30 feet limit up over the trees. There's nothing I can see here. It's above all the roof lines. And I can't imagine that it would be lit one night. I can't wait for that. I just hope that, I don't think you do much business at night. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't see any reason why you should illuminate it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe
Uh,
we do have her photographs that were submitted.
Have we seen it yet?
It's a opposition letter.
Tammy, they're photographs.
Yep, I can bring it up if you want me to.
Okay,
Sure.
It'll take me a minute. Also, Oliver has his hand raised. I don't know if that's just from before. I don't know if he's allowed to speak again.
I
No,
don't believe he
Okay.
is.
no, the answer is no. I think we got the essence of what the objection is, and quite frankly, I don't like the sign either. But
May I offer?
we have a lot, no, you get to rebut in a minute. Let me see what this picture looks like, and then we'll
No,
come
I-
back to Liz.
But Mr. Chairman, I wasn't asking to rebut. May I offer a compromise for consideration?
No, that'd be fine, but just hold on and let's see this picture.
So there are actually a couple of photos. Once again, I'm sorry, I'm not able to orient it properly. This is from Mrs. West's desk. I'm sorry, her deck view. Give me just a second.
Yeah. If it's upside down, I'll figure it out. Don't worry.
What do you say?
Okay. So that's.
Yeah, got it. I got it.
And then we've got a couple of other photos were submitted with the other opposition letter. This is north side, wait. Oh, I think this is the front. This is the front.
That's the
design.
front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, so the sign is here. And then, oops.
Go up a little bit. There you go.
That's the south side.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So the photo taken from the deck would have been a photo of this side, this house side.
Yes.
Is there anyone else that had wanted to speak?
Hang on one second. No, and the two letters came from the speakers.
All right. We have heard from the speakers. Liz, you want to offer a suggestion or give rebuttal?
Yes, I'd like to offer a suggestion, and unfortunately, given the way the format of these meetings takes place, it's a little bit cumbersome, so I've been back and forth with my client to see if this might be something that you would consider. To leave the sign on the north side, since that doesn't seem to be as objectionable to at least anyone, but on the south side of the building, perhaps consider this, that we install a sign that meets the maximum height of the wall sign. Letter size stays the same, but rather than removing that sign that exists from the wall, install over it a covering that completely obscures that lettering of the same color, so that we don't run the risk of whatever damage might occur to that wall.
Would you tell me what you mean by same color? You mean the same color as the wall around it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Would that be something that might be an amenable compromise? The sign is lowered, letter size stays the same, but the sign that is non-compliant would be covered in perpetuity rather than it be removed from the building face.
Well, the owner can figure out if he wants to remove it, but I do think we've got to do something with the south sign.
Could we see?
I agree with that. And Liz, wouldn't you have the same problem with public storage doing that? Covering up their sign? Wouldn't that, or at least wouldn't you need their permission? The point that Mr. Carroll was making earlier, you can't really. speak
No,
for what
no,
they'll
we would, I don't
say.
believe I'm sorry, Mr. Lyon, excuse me for interrupting you.
Okay.
Wouldn't be changing the coloration to then dilute the brand. It would be to lower the sign to a compliant height from grade, leave the letter size as it is, keep the color as it is, but then that would, to some extent, address some of the concerns of neighbors in Village Creek, that it may not be quite as visible. It might be a little bit obscured by the buildings that are behind this structure. And then the sign that exists right now that is non-conforming, cover that in a way that no one can see that lettering anymore, but not be obligated to remove it off the face of the
Yeah, I
building.
followed the proposal. I just think that when it comes to branding for large corporations, they might well want to have a say in the fact that you've covered up a sign of theirs, even if you have replaced it.
All right, there was a point made earlier that the documents doesn't show an approval for the south side. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
The zoning I'm sorry, was this for me? The question?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
zoning permit indicates north and south sign. The building permit says 2 signs on the north facade.
But you know, this is like one screw up on top of another.
On top
With
of
this in
another.
mind, we don't care much about what corporate entities want. The owner of the building does. And so the owner of the building has to figure out how to satisfy the corporate client. With ours, if this had come to us and they'd asked for variance, we wouldn't have granted it. It just wouldn't have happened. I can't speak for all of us, but I'm pretty sure I got it right. And so with that in mind, I would say a compromise is apropos. And I don't know if Ryan Carroll has a possibility of compromise in mind, but I think that's probably where we're headed.
Right, and I would say that we would not have intentionally come before you guys to apply for a variance, but we are where we are, and we have all acknowledged that we have ended up here through some oversights on both ends. I just wanted to address a point that I believe, Andy, you had made a couple minutes ago in asking if the sign is permanent forever, or, how would we then move it? I would say what we would propose is we would be happy to have whatever variance could be achieved from this meeting, only stick with this sign as it exists now. And to be completely honest with you guys, the next owner or the next tenant would likely be deeper pocketed than we are, and they would incur that cost and be able to deal with the potentially structural reinforcing once that sign is removed and the costs that would arise after that.
I'm thinking.
I would like to
I'm thinking
remind my
King
fellow-
Solomon. King Solomon sound good to you? We
Yeah.
split the baby here?
I would just like to bring up that I feel that our primary obligation is to the residential complaints here. I don't think that the fact that there were mistakes made by staff really has any bearing.
And
And
Marilyn, I'm sorry, Keith. Marilyn had a question, I think.
Oh, I would just like to see a rendition of what Ms. Suchi was talking about. And, I agree with you, Keith, because I think that there were errors made on both parts. I do think it's just on us to maybe come up with a compromise, because I think both sides here have a dog in this fight. Both sides screwed up, and at the end of the day, I don't think that those people should look at that sign. Honestly.
that's very much my feeling.
But I think I'd like to see if
The
that,
world of business is hard.
yeah, but I
we
think
all
the
know that.
compromise, because who's gonna pay for, I don't know if it falls on one or both, but maybe what Ms. Suchi has suggested might look good, but I'd like to see a rendition of it. What would it look like if, you have that coloration matching the building?
Well, what was suggested by Liz was that you keep the same size of a sign, the same letter height in the sign, the same color of the sign, but drop it down so that it's low enough that it's within our requirement.
And
And that would be the south side sign, and that we would not touch the north side sign.
yes, and so
that
in
was
fact,
it.
it becomes more invisible. I mean, it just comes lower and hopefully covered, and the
Buildings and trees in the way that knock it off if it's low enough. Currently, it's quite high and it's very visible.
Yeah.
And it's extremely garish, so I would never have gone for this from day one. But anyway, I think the compromise makes sense to me. I don't think that when you make a mistake, you tell everybody to hell with it. It's your problem, not ours. It's our combined problem. And I think coming up with a joint solution is a good idea. Mr. Carroll, what do you think?
We are more than open to compromise and honestly appreciate your guys' willingness to work with us. Again, just speaking honestly, I would have to confirm that one, we are able to cover the existing sign with a similar facade. And then two, we would have to check with structural engineers to make sure that essentially at that point, the building itself could structurally support two signs on it, and that given the layout of the windows and the separation of the different coloring, and that those are two different types of facades, if we could lower it and continue to have a secondary sign. So more than here to discuss compromises, and I just can't speak quite yet.
One of our
to,
options
in
is-
actuality, if we could
Ryan,
actually go through.
Ryan, one of our options is to just tell you, you have to. I don't really want to go down that road, but I think a long discussion with engineers about what you can and can't do. I think you're going to have to figure out how to reach a compromise and then explain to your client that you've reached a compromise and that there is a code in Norwalk and they are not in code. And so we're going to have one sign change to be in code and the other sign not. And that's you're going to have to sell it to them. Or we extend the meeting, and I think you could end up where we tell you both signs have to change. I don't think that's a good outcome, but I don't think you want to get everybody and their brother involved telling us how we can't do it. I think we need to be able to have a compromise that's doable.
Right.
And I feel the compromise should be acceptable to the two residents that spoke on behalf of the residents of Village Creek.
Yeah, and would the board have enough votes to affirm it?
I think we might, Andy.
All right, I think we do, but I think Mr. Carroll needs to decide whether he wants a continuance while he consults with lots of people, or whether he wants to accept the compromise.
I think we'd be willing to accept the compromise and move forward.
All right, good.
And again, appreciate everyone's willingness to work something out with us.
Terrific. I'm glad to hear that. Liz, did you have anything further?
I don't have anything further.
All right. So let's move on to the next item.
What's the number, Andy?
I'm gonna pick it off the agenda right now. 230216 01 RJR Northeast LLC,
Okay,
44 Van Zandt.
I got it. Item number 23-0216-01. RJR Northeast LLC proposed motor vehicle repair license application in neighborhood business zone, property located at 44 Van Zandt Street, District 3, Block 39, Lot 2. Request: the applicant seeks approval from the board for repairs service, K7 state license for Express Auto Works, proposed maintenance and repair of new and used cars. Background: previous variances listed were actually related to motor vehicle approvals through the ZBA. The existing building contains several overhead garage doors. In 2004, permits were issued for Enterprise Rental Cars and J.N. Phillips Auto Glass. Analysis and findings: the board will act as an agent of the state to decide whether this is an appropriate use for this location. In granting the license, you are affirming that this is an appropriate use. The applicant will also have to make an application for special permit to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Chairman.
Do we have anybody that is speaking for the applicant?
That would be me, sir. Good evening.
Okay, and your name is?
My name is Osman Hernandez.
Okay. Go ahead. Is there something you want to say to the board?
No, sir.
All right. Tammy, is there a way, I don't know with this particular type of thing, since we just started doing it, can we delay this to 1 month? I would like to know every single type of facility like this that's on Van Zandt.
Oh, there are,
Because I think there are several.
correct. Sir.
We have the potential to do that, to continue it, as far as I'm aware, but Osman is actually here to make, Osman, you should have a presentation. You're needing to tell them the scope, your proposal.
I don't mind doing that. I'm just saying that at the end, when this all wraps up, I'm gonna want to know who the other repair facilities are and gas stations, et cetera, on Van Zandt. We're supposed to decide whether it's an appropriate location. And I think knowing what's there is part of making that decision.
Okay.
Mr. Fernandez?
Yep, so there are 3 other locations on that same street. 2 of those are repair shops, mechanical, and one is a body shop.
And one is what shop?
Auto body repair shop.
Auto body repair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
within-
thought there were a couple auto body repair because I took my car there to get it fixed, but that was a long time ago.
They are actually within that mile radius. There are about 10 repair shops in total. 3 body shops on I believe that's near East Avenue, and then there's about 3 gas stations, and 2 of those have repair shops.
And the facility that you want to operate out of is structured to be able to handle a bunch of cars without sticking them out in the street and all over the place?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a site plan?
Well, there was a service that we submitted with.
Yeah, I can bring it up. Do you want me to bring it up?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
hang on.
I'm still going to want that information, so we're going to have to hold them over. So we can either do it now or we could do it next.
I just like to see the site plan, Andy.
Okay,
Yeah,
go.
Give me 1 second.
I mean, I know the street and I know a number of the repair shops.
Anyway, our only task, Fernandez, is to determine whether the location is appropriate. That's the only thing we do in this case.
Okay, understood. It used to be a body repair shop at once, Nora Collision.
Okay. How far back?
I would say about 3 years, could be.
Okay. I might have used them. All right, terrific. So what am I looking at here? Here's the Van Zandt. Are those all car stalls that are parking spaces that are indicated, they all associated with this building?
Mr. Hernandez, which building are you going to be occupying?
It would be 48, which is it's the bay towards the back, which would be right over here. Yep, right there.
And that's in an alleyway, right? You're not street facing?
No, it's not street facing. It's the bay all the way towards the back,
Mhm.
right over here.
So you're part of the big building.
Correct.
Okay.
Are those spaces all yours?
I'm assigned to 6 spaces, and the bay right over here towards the end, and then office space towards the front.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Fernandez?
No?
Okay, if the board doesn't mind, I'd like to continue this to next month so that we can get a complete listing and kind of a layout of Van Zandt Street and see what's on there, because I think there's a lot.
would
Everything
agree.
from a gas station to a repair shop, to a auto glass place, anything of that nature. And, you know, if it's a repairs of transmissions, I want to know that. In other words, anything related to automobiles, glass repair, service.
I don't think there's a gas station. There are 4 gas stations, so in close proximity at East Avenue, just down the block.
Yeah, there was one, but I think it got changed to something else.
Yeah, I don't think it's there now.
Okay, can we do that? Can we continue to next month and let the staff get some time to take a look at this? Again, we're limited to saying this is a good location or it's not. Anybody not in favor of continuing?
I think I'm fine with it, Andy. Continue
Okay.
this.
Yeah, we continue it.
All right, let's do it. And so we're going to pull in that additional information and then we'll come back and complete our application process.
Yep.
Okay, okey doke.
Yep. Thank
That'll
you.
be
Thank you.
March 16th.
March 16th. Are you in town? You can handle that one?
Yes, I'll be here.
Terrific. Terrific. What do we have next?
Thank you.
Believe it's 86 Bluff Avenue.
Tammy, I think I'm,
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Yeah, 2302-1603.
yeah. Next item is 23-0216-03. Philip and Aaron Kerr. Variance of setbacks. Front 29.3 proposed to house, 25.1 proposed to entry, 40 feet required. Side, 9.2 feet to house, 4.3 to deck, 40 feet required. Aggregate side yard, aggregate side rear, 10.5 feet house, 3.2 to deck, 17.5 required. Building area, 33% proposed, 25% allowed. Section 118-330C and variance of parking within the front yard setback, section 118-1220J to construct a new single-family flood compliant dwelling in a residence zone. Property located at 86 Bluff Avenue, District 6, Block 15, Lot 1. The applicant seeks variance to construct a new FEMA flood compliant single-family dwelling to be built on pilings with vehicle parking located under the structure. Technically, portions of the proposed parking fall within the required front setback, triggering need for parking variance. Background: the existing home was built in 1930. There are existing footprint and lot coverage nonconformities. The existing gravel parking pad created along Bluff Avenue does not comply with the prohibition of parking in the front yard setback. Analysis and findings. The proposed structure is similar in scale and footprint location compared to the existing structure. Some of the nonconformities would be reduced by the proposal, including a reduction of non-conforming parking within the front yard setback. The usual lot configuration, overall smaller lot size, and allowable building footprint appear to meet the criteria for zoning hardship. Mr. Chairman.
Tammy, oftentimes we say the required front setback is X and existing is Y. And requested is X. What is existing in this case? Is that known to us and we have
Yeah, the
easily?
existing structure is, if you give me just 1 second, sorry.
Amy, can I share my screen with the table?
Wait, and may I
Yeah.
just say something, Andy?
If you have some of that information to provide, please.
I think I need to recuse myself on this.
Why?
I'm around the corner. I don't know if I should be judging
Well,
this.
how, it's like next door or what?
Just about. It's
Yeah.
literally around the corner.
Okay,
About 2 feet.
Tom, are you gonna fill in for Marilyn?
Yeah, I'll fill in.
All right, thanks.
Mr.
All
Conrad, I don't know if you want Ms. Maldonado to
With all
speak.
that, Adam, are you speaking for the applicant?
Yes, sir. So Adam Blank for the applicant, but I do have with me, and you're going to hear from Craig Flaherty from Redness and Mead, the engineer, and Mark Goodwin of Byfield Architecture, the architect on the project. And I'm going to go out of order because I want to answer your question first, which was, do we know what's there now? And in essence, we're taking the footprint of the house, we're shifting it slightly away from the Farm Creek because we know that that's what Deep is going to ask for in the city on the zoning side for the CAM review. But the footprint essentially stays exactly the same. We don't encroach any further in any direction. We don't expand the house, other than it does get elevated. So you'll see on the existing conditions and the proposed, they're either the same. And there's one exception, which I'll talk about in a second. They're either the same or we've made it less of a non-conformity than what exists currently. We don't make anything worse, right? We don't make it bigger. We don't make it worse. It stays the
Right, that was really what it was after. I wanted that knowledge.
And there's one, so you don't tell me I lied to you. So there is one gray area that I would say we and your staff don't necessarily agree on. And so we depending on how you see it, we might ask for, we are asking then, if you see it the way staff sees it, for a further encroachment. So in the front yard, let me show you. So let me just show you. So just by background. So Bluff Ave and Samus is here. You probably know from the kids, the Bell Island Bridge, where they
I was down, I looked at the property today.
So that's the property that we're talking about. On the getting into the house, when it's elevated, this is proposed, there'll be masonry front steps that come up to get into the house, right? This does not count, and your staff will confirm for you, the masonry steps, they don't count as a structure, and they don't count as being in the setback. That's just, it's permitted, okay? The part that gets a little bit grayer is that the way that the regs, so this comes up and now entrance is the new, what I would say is the front door, right, of the house. And that's clearly compliant. The issue is we've got this landing here where you walk in. Underneath is your entrance to the garage, and directly underneath is a proposed door to entrance to the basement, to the lower level of the house. That, if this area here, that is considered a covering for the door below, it complies with your regs, and that we don't need to expand into or encroach any further into the front yard setback. If it's not considered a covering to this front door underneath, if it's considered like an entrance to the floor above, then it would encroach further into the front setback, because underneath here is air rather than dirt. So, but the odd part about that kind of a interpretation would be the remedy to make it compliant would be to fill underneath, and then it would be fine. That we would not be any more encroaching. So the issue is just if we have it open air underneath here. Is that a covering, which under the regs?
Is that a big concrete platform structure?
Yeah, so the reg says a roofed over but unenclosed projection in the nature of an entry or portico with the building area of not more than 8 feet in width and not more than 6 feet in depth, out from the conforming front wall of the building, shall be exempt from the requirements of this section. And so if that's what this is, we don't require any additional variance into the front yard. However, if you say, no, that doesn't work for you, Adam, then on the front yard, you'll see with the entry, it goes from being 25 to 14, or from the house, this is what's existing, it drops down to 15 feet.
To be clear, that the 14.9, Adam, is the amount of variance requested. So it bumps out just less than the
Yeah,
29. No, it's 29.3 today, and then it comes to 25.1. So it's a 4.2 feet, bumps out 4.2 feet.
Right. Thank you, Craig. So that's the gray, and I will go sort of working backwards. The lot, which we should mention here, is that the lot is about 7,000 square feet. It's just over 7,000 square feet in the A residence. The minimum lot size is 12,500. So you've got this FEMA nonconformity, bringing it into FEMA compliance, which is one basis for variance and for your hardship. But because it's an odd shaped lot and it's significantly undersized, that creates a whole lot of other logistical challenges, which is a unique hardship for this property, as opposed to what you often see on these FEMA variance requests. And that in and of itself provides you with the basis to grant the variances requested.
If I could ask one quick question, because we're talking about this, I'm not just hitting you up with a bunch of questions. Total square footage of the existing house and total square footage of the proposed house.
Craig or Mark, do you have that information?
I think it's about, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're in the range of 2,400 square feet in the basically story and a half that it is today, and 4,200 square feet when done. Still significantly less than what you could build on a compliant, 12,500 square foot lot.
What's inside of the 4,200? Is that the bottom floor also, which is where the house been lifted up, or that's just the floors above that?
It's just the 2.5 living area.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And before I turn it over, let me also I'll just share with you. We've got a couple letters of support. These are from the two immediate neighbors, Beth and Ron Chapman, 56 Samus. My husband and I live next to Aaron and Phil Kerr, while our home faces Samus Street. We share waterfront footage with the Kerr's residents. They've shared with us elevation plans for their renovation to 86 Bluff. We're excited for Aaron and Phil and fully support this renovation. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime for confirmation or if we can help in any way. And from their other immediate neighbor at 84 Bluff, Summer and I own the property directly north of the Kerr family on Bluff Ave. The Kerrs have kindly shared an elevation and site plan dated 10/28/22 for the redevelopment of their home, and we support their pursuit of approvals of the design and vision for their property presented in those plans. We're available to discuss. Summer Chatwin and Jonathan Walk. With that, so those were the letters of support. We were not aware of, nobody's voiced opposition to us. And I think with that, Mark, you want to just run through it for a minute?
Sure, yep. If someone could, Adam, were you able to bring up the drawings? And I'll just cue you to scroll. Hi, everyone. Mark Goodwin, Minefield Architecture. I'm a principal here. I've been with Bruce for last 23 years. We are, thank you all for reviewing this proposal tonight. We've been thrilled working with the Kerrs. It's been an exciting process to get to this point. And we're all excited to kind of have you take a look at what we're proposing. So as I think you got a quick preview already from some of the discussion that happened. So our proposal here is to create sort of a, home for this family where the site is flood prone, as you know, and as the regs say. So they immediately wanted to raise the house and kind of make it compliant. So on this lower level in the foundation, one of the challenges we had was to be able to kind of get the 2-car garage as well as sort of entry in on this lower level. This foundation level consists of storage, parking for 2 cars, an entrance to get to the stairs to go up into the upper level. The house is, per the FEMA regulations, it's built on piers. So you see the concrete piers around the perimeter and in the middle. That's per the obstruction guidelines. In between the piers, we have breakaway walls. So that's also per the FEMA technical bulletins that allow for those walls to break away during a flood condition. In those walls are also flood vents, so they comply with the square footage area for the venting. And any materials that are down here will be flood resistant, again, as for FEMA technical bulletin 2. The covered patio area down the bottom of the plan, that area is currently a crawl space. So we've actually reduced the amount of enclosed area that's in the floodplain by about 470 square feet. So that's now open. There's 4 columns that define that area. There's house above that, but it's open air, again, for water to kind of flow in and out of that zone of the property. To the right, just below the car is the entry platform that was discussed, the stone stairs up, and then platform kind of into the first floor, which we'll see in a minute as we go to that page. Pool in the upper left corner of the plan, and down in the lower left corner of the plan are outdoors where there's currently an addition. We've taken that addition away in terms of square footage, and there's an outdoor stair just to get up to some of the deck levels, which you'll see on the next plan. So,
Mark, a quick question.
Sure.
Very little to do with the plan. How is the gas fireplace flood resistant and not considered an appliance, would not be permitted within a flood zone?
The gas fireplace, I don't have a good answer to that. I think that I don't know, we haven't specified one yet, so I don't know how that would be fired, if there's any electronics in it or not.
I happen to know that most gas fireplaces have electric igniters. And I don't think that the fireplace will be approved for its flood resistance, but I just bring that up as an architect. So,
Yeah, and actually, you know what, now that you're jogging my memory, so the intent is actually for that to be a wood burning fireplace. So that's an error on our part in terms of the note.
okay.
We have gas fireplaces on the upper levels, that fireplaces tend to be wood burning. So I agree with you, we would not have that there. On the upper level, on this is the first main living level of the house, up at elevation 19. Consists of kitchen, open living room area, pantry and other storage. There's a door at the top of the stairs as you arrive. You can see the balcony, I'm calling it about the deck below on the lower part of the plan with the stairs is a pretty good reduction from the deck that's there now. that deck does wrap around the house to create a elevated mechanical platform. So plan is to put the mechanical platforms up on that level. And with, again, the stairs going down, back down to level below. The second floor is to the right, Adam, and bedrooms and that's the attic level. Just, yeah, so the second floor, bedrooms for the family, 3 bedrooms for the kids, and master suite for the Kerrs. And then the attic level is compliant attic, 60% of the floor below, compliant dormer, and it's about 700 square feet up here. Compliant with the house story as well. Style wise, we were working to kind of blend in with the beach community, the Rayton community, shingles on the walls and the roof, vertical siding on the what I would call the addition or the sort of bump out enclosed porch to the one side. Simple dormer in the front, cupola stone on the base to give the ground to give the anchor the house a bit. And on the two sort of the south and the north elevation, you kind of see the stone stairs and how they kind of bring you up to the upper level with that sort of opening underneath to get into that lower level door. And yeah, and height wise, we're fitting in under the height regulations for both midpoint and ridge height. And that's it.
Unless there's questions for him, Craig, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Craig Flaherty, professional engineer, registered in the state of Connecticut, principal and senior engineer with Redness and Mead. Back to just an aerial orientation. You can pretty quickly see the size of the lot compared to some of the compliant lot sizes that exist immediately adjacent and in the neighborhood. So I'm going to show you a couple of exhibits. This is just a picture of what's landscaping and what's not landscaping. So it's an impervious coverage of hardscape shot.
Craig, can you just point out the existing drive before you do your exhibits?
Yeah, this is right here. This is the existing drive right there. And then you can see that in the aerial as well, right here. So
that's not showing up on my screen at all.
Oh, let me try sharing again.
Yeah, Craig, we were seeing the aerial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I switched software. Yeah, so go back to the PDF now. Is this good, Mr. Levy?
I'm looking at it so far.
Okay, good. Hopefully we'll stick with it. So this is the aerial. This is the existing kind of half moon parking area right at the front property boundary. And I'm going to show you a few exhibits that were appended to the narrative provided with the application. The first exhibit is just an analysis of softscape versus hardscape, green versus gray. And the purpose of this is to show you our efforts to, one, very clearly, you'll see on the next one, moving the driveway, but also our effort to get a green buffer between the hardscape and Farm Creek, which is to the south here. So as I toggle from existing in this picture to proposed in this picture, you can see that green buffer appear and that driveway normalize. Similarly, more to the point of the variance application and trying to stay within the precedents you've set in the past. This shows the existing building area, so it's the enclosed footprint as well as any structured appurtenance attached there too, like the decks and so forth. So this is the existing building area. The existing building area is 35% of the site, and you can see how the required setbacks relate to the existing building area. Obviously, very hard to rebuild within those setbacks and have any meaningful home sites. So when we go to the proposed building area, again, you'll see how we've tried to take the building away from Farm Creek and the decks away from Farm Creek as I toggle back and forth. If we focused on this west and south side here, where we're most over the setbacks and go from this existing picture to this proposed picture. So this is the proposed building area. It's 33% of the site, so we're reducing building area. If this building area happened to be sitting on a compliant lot size of 12,500 square feet, it would only be 18% of the 25% allowed. So it's certainly commensurate with what you would be allowed to build in the neighborhood on a compliant lot. The one square in the middle you see with the crosshatch, that's the only portion of the enclosed space that touches down at grade. So that's actually a significant reduction from the existing condition that we're looking at here to the proposed condition. So at grade, it's just this bit, which Mark described. This is the portion with the second and third floor above, as well as this. And, or I should say, first story and second story, because this portion is effectively what would otherwise be a basement if we weren't in the flood zone. Basically, we are maintaining or increasing setbacks on the side, maintaining or increasing setbacks on the front, and maintaining or increasing aggregate side, and maintaining or increasing the setback to the rear. So we tried to stay within the footprint and just go up and even make it a little bit smaller. And Adam described the entry condition here, which is, again, a covered portico to the door below, or the stoop that you stand on to the door above. And this was the summary of all the dimensional items that Adam has already gone over.
How are you doing on presentation?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Happy to answer
We
questions.
need to complete relatively soon, so I want to go to the board members that have questions. And you're not asking a question, Marilyn. 'Cause
Well,
you're recused.
okay, but there's something that, all right, there's something important here. That's why I was listening. It's the first time I know about this. There is a walkway for several people in this area that have access to Farm Creek that go right behind that house. I don't know. It's from Samus Street and it just cuts through to Farm Creek, right by 84, 86, and I guess 82. I just thought I should throw that out there. It's in my title, and there was a to-do about it several years ago. So I'm just mentioning it. I am recused, but I think I should just put that out there.
100% request off the property to the west is a private way.
Okay,
That private way extends from Samus Street down to Farm Creek. And nothing that is proposed is at all altering or hindering the private way.
thank you. Sorry about that.
And it's indicated on all of our maps, 12-foot private way. You can see it off the west side of all of our maps.
Okey-doke. A board member have a question that they would like to ask, who is active and not recused?
No.
No questions here.
All right, I see a lot of benefits from this design. And, you know, it's unfortunate that it's getting tall, but it's going to have to go up one story. So there isn't any way around that. If there are no further questions, then let's see if there's anybody that wanted to speak in favor of this in the public.
Okay, there's a few attendees. If anyone wishes to speak in favor, just use your raise your hand feature. If you've called in, then you press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. No raised hands.
All right, is there anybody that wants to speak against or opposes the project?
So attendees, raise your hand if you'd like to speak in opposition. If you've called in, *9 to raise hand, *6 to unmute. No,
None?
none.
Okay. And that being said, I don't see Adam a need to respond to anything because there's nothing to respond to.
Not at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. That's dawned on me. Anyway, so with that in mind, let's move ahead. Might be time to I'm digging through my paper. It's one thing that we've always had a lot of is paper. Here we are. So let's do the board action, starting with the last that we've heard. And since make note of who Tammy is voting. Marilyn recused herself, Tom is in, and the rest are board members. Does anybody want to form a motion?
Well,
Or
I'd like to say I'm in favor of this project, but it's a little bit like putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound sack. I mean, this is well maxed out, and I think they've done a good job with it, but whew, what a change. But I'll say that I'll make a motion that we approve this application as submitted.
I agree with Lee. I'll second.
and that's Danielle second. So all in favor, show of hands.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Did I miss somehow? No. So we're unanimous. All right, item E, which was on 44 Van Zant, we have delayed and we'll hear again next month. Item D, property located at 320 Wilson. We've come up with an agreement that my understanding is the sign on the south side will maintain its configuration and color, but be lowered to comply with the city requirements, and in an effort to make sure it's not visible to the neighbors, particularly those in Farm Creek. Anybody else have anything else they wanted to add on this item?
Well, what's the nature of this going forward? It's verified that this is done.
Tom, I didn't want to leave anything hanging, so I
Yeah.
asked them to make the agreement tonight that they agreed to do this. So that means the north side stays as is, the south side comes down lower, which means they'll come up with a new sign and probably cover the old sign.
So it's a vote up for the compromise, vote down for no compromise.
All right, that is compromise, yeah.
Good, okay.
And if they don't agree to that, then they got to come back and we would probably just deny the whole thing and tell them move all the signs.
I
Yeah.
think the motion should include language that addresses the fact that public storage may well not agree, in which case it'll be denied. I think they
Well,
glossed over the
doesn't
language.
In every case where we have had the argument made that a corporation has requirements, I remind people that if you travel throughout Connecticut, you will see those very same corporations, McDonald et al., do whatever the local ordinances require. So I'm not buying that argument at all. So if we come up with the agreement, we come up with the agreement. You don't have to caveat it.
Okay.
Well, I'd also like to add that they should resubmit a drawing for approval by staff. And any variation from our approval, we'll move this back to us.
You know, see this young man.
Mhm.
He and his partners built that public storage building. It's that first spec property.
Yeah,
They got
we
the
did have
same
one other
loan.
thing, actually,
And
that
they're like, oh, it's gonna cost us a lot of money and it's gonna be home.
whoever's having the conversation, mute yourself. That we did say that what we would do was require, if there is a change of tenant and signage, that the new signage meet the existing code at the time for signage. So that
I
was,
agree with that.
that's a requirement which would not kick in until there was a change in tenant or a change in signage, not including what we've agreed to as a solution to the current problem. So those are the conditions. And with those conditions, Tammy, you might have to go back to the recording and make sure we get them all nailed down.
I would actually like to clarify. So we're saying we're going to, the north side will stay as is, the south side existing sign to be covered, new sign installed below to be compliant. That
With height.
letter height needs to also comply?
No, the structure of the sign will not comply. The height of the sign into the air will comply.
Okay,
that it
so
won't be
just
visible.
lowering it.
But-
Okay,
But it'll still look like the sign that's on the north side, as ugly as it may be. But in the,
I'd also like to make sure that, you know, they just don't paint over the existing sign and
I don't
place
care what
another
the-
one. I think it has to
sign
be,
disappears and isn't visible.
I
in
think
the-
it has to be physically covered.
Cover it, yeah.
Okay,
I'm not requiring that, and I think we ought not to, as a board, require that they remove it because of all the problems associated with removal.
well, we'll
But
give them
coverage-
that option.
Coverage, yes, and then new signage below, but it would look really stupid to have those signs right there.
I've seen it.
What's gonna happen? I mean, that would just be enormously dumb. So with all that in mind, Tammy, did you have further questions?
no, I've got it now.
Yeah, and then in the future, should there be a change, and there will be at some point, in tenancy or in sign, that they then comply with the then existing sign code.
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, who is making the motion and who is seconding? Because several of us made the motion, but who wants to take credit for it? I'll move it. All right, Andy moves it.
I'll second it.
I didn't hear who that was.
Marilyn. Oh,
Okay.
Marilyn.
All right, Andy, Marilyn. And all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Do this reluctantly.
Yeah.
Reluctantly, as though it may be, and anybody who's against. All right, Keith is against. So 4 are required for passage, and we have 4 positive votes, and therefore it passes. Make sure you note that Keith was against. I don't think he
I
wants
got
to
it.
be included. I know it doesn't want to be included in the future as having approved it. All right, next up, we had 34 Burritt withdraw. So the next item up the line is Bagos at 10 Richmond Road. I'm ready to approve it. I don't have any further issues with it. And the plans as presented are fine in my view. Anybody else?
No, I have no problem with it.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion besides me?
I'll make a motion that we approve this item as submitted.
All right, and then what somebody wonders about the hardship is that if you're in the flood zone, to get FEMA coverage, you've got to raise the building if the building's not high enough already. And so that is the working hardship in all these instances. And who's seconding? Don't all jump on us.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Is that Keith?
Yep.
All right, Keith. So all in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're unanimous. In case you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm making a note. So that takes care of that one. And finally, we have One San Vincenzo Realty LLC. And does anybody want to, that was the contractor storage yard, and they wanted a special exception to change it from the one non-conforming use to another. And they also want the variance to allow the yard to be smaller than would normally be required. So anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Keith, Lee, all in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, all right, unanimous. All right, we're done for the evening, with the exception that we should do any administrative stuff that we haven't done already. Let's put the minutes off till the next meeting. I haven't had a chance really to go through them. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Fine.
Status of training, you know that you should be signing up. You've had several messages to that effect.
We've
And,
already signed up everybody who was interested.
everybody needs to be interested, because to be on the board,
Exactly.
yeah, there's not an option here. It's just when the training's available. I hope it's available more than just a one time. But anyway, we'll find that out.
I'll email you, Tammy.
I'm going to the one coming up.
I'll accept.
So am I, Andy.
And are you, Keith?
Yes.
Okay.
March 11th?
Yes.
Did we get
Yeah,
a confirmation
That
email?
weekend, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to that, right, Tammy?
Yes, so we have not gotten the confirmation back yet. We registered everybody. They're actually going to mail physical packets to your homes.
So that's what they did last time. Yeah, and it was a good packet. It was good to have.
Keith, I'll see if I can get you in.
It's a webinar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just gotta go through
Danielle,
finance.
do you have a question? I saw you waving there a little bit.
Oh, just if we were getting a confirmation email with like, a link or something.
Well, Tammy's gonna have to make sure we know our status, because if it turns out they
Yeah.
can't accept us all, we need to know that, obviously. And Tom, was this one that you were going to attend?
On March 11th, correct.
Yeah, okay, so we're good.
Yeah.
With that in mind, if there's anything else, anybody had any questions on for this evening? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Forever hold your peace.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the hearing.
Yeah,
I
and
will
second,
second.
all right, and we're done.
Don't all rush at
Good night,
once.
everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you very much for attending.
Bye-bye.